None of these images were built in rendering software. They all came from this, a quick sketch drawn over a simple SketchUp model. This is similar to the workflow you've seen before, fast sketches turned into clear images in minutes. But this project is further along. This isn't concept design anymore. So when you have a project like this, there's a more precise workflow, using SketchUp and a refined drawing to control the final image. Now stick with me for a second because I want to show you where this design came from, and you might even find it relevant to something you're working on these days. I was riding a city bike the other day, and everywhere you go in New York, you see modular scaffolding and green plywood, and it got me thinking, what if you designed a house that took advantage of all that, the minimal waste, the ease of layout and construction, but it still had some unexpected moves that made it truly modern, maybe even made it architecture. So I started with the simplest version, a rectangular volume on a 2-foot grid, and I got excited enough about these possibilities that I knew I wanted to take this beyond a sketch. So I did just enough design work to lock in the module and make sure the system actually worked. Then I took it a step further. Using Procreate's draw-to-scale setup, a scale ruler, and drawing assist, I drafted some clean elevation studies, quickly but accurately. And once those were in place, I exported them into SketchUp and built a very simple version of each wall. Nothing too fancy, no interior space, just openings, proportions, and structure. Then I lifted those walls into place so I had a basic 3D model, just enough to rotate the model and find the right scene to control the final AI images. Once I had that scene, I just took a screenshot of it, which I find to be faster and simpler than exporting a 2D view from SketchUp, and I saved that to iCloud Drive and then imported that into a fresh canvas in Procreate. At that point, the process becomes very similar to the 10-minute sketches we've made in earlier videos, where the goal is to tell the story you want the final image to tell. Now I'm using red with the flat brush in Procreate to block in the basic framework of the view, loose strokes for the trees, thinner lines to suggest branches, a few lines for the mountains in the distance. It's quick, it's even a little messy, because this isn't about making a beautiful drawing. This is about giving the AI just enough information to understand the scene. But there's another advantage to working this way. I can start adding design details that I never modeled in SketchUp. The canopy over the terrace door, the landscaping around the porch, the path out to the fieldstone wall and the cut through it with steps down to the yard, even things like the tire swing and the planting beds and how the house meets the ground, all of that starts to take shape here. I can suggest how the driveway approaches and then disappears over the hill. And just as important, I can begin to describe the interior, the 2-story space, the depth of the room, the furniture, a dining table, and the mezzanine overlooking the living area and opening out to the second floor terrace. These are things I didn't fully resolve earlier, but the drawing makes it easier to think through than doing them in SketchUp. Because everything is layered, I can keep refining, even adding a semi-transparent layer of white to the layer stack so I can keep working over the top of it with a finer and finer pen. Again, this isn't about making it look good, it's about making the intent unmistakable. In many ways, it's faster and more intuitive to design these details here than to build them up in SketchUp. And honestly, some of these ideas only start to emerge once the image comes to life. The final step is to take all of this red line work and desaturate it to grayscale so there's no confusion when the AI interprets the image. And now it's time to upload that final sketch to Nano Banana and see what happens. We know the sketch is the most important part of this workflow, but the second piece is what I call the universal prompt. That's what triggers the interview process, where Gemini starts asking you about the materials, the site, the lighting, and the overall story of the image, so you don't have to be an expert. And you can find that prompt in the free download linked in the description below. And you'll want to store it in the Personal Intelligence section under Settings, so you can come back to it and copy it each time you begin a new thread. From there, I start a new thread, I switch to thinking mode, I tap Create Image, I upload the sketch, and I paste in the prompt, and just like that, the interview begins. The first question is always about materials, the primary exterior materials and the immediate surroundings like paths and patios. And here I used a simple trick. I opened a separate thread in Gemini and used dictation to describe the materials and setting in detail. then asked it to refine that into a clean, usable prompt. In this case, I landed on white vertical cedar siding, a pewter-colored standing seam roof, and matching window mullions. And as soon as I submit that, Gemini comes back with the next question, asking me to describe the specific landscape and geographic context for the house. And again, there's no need to stop the video. All of these prompts are included in the free download below. But here I just want to make sure Nano Banana understands the sketch, how the driveway approaches the house, how the immediate ground transitions to pine needles and large stones in the forest floor, and how the view opens up in the distance across the fields to a lake and a range of mountains beyond. Question 3 is about the light, the time of day, the season, the atmosphere. And here I chose an early spring morning just as the leaves are starting to come in, and that gives you those long shadows from the trees with that dappled light falling across the house. And I also pushed for a strong shadow between the house and the driveway just to give the image more depth and contrast. The final question is always about the narrative, the story you want the image to tell, and really that's the job of any rendering, to help someone see themselves in the scene. So here I described a quiet weekend morning, guests arriving from the city, kids out on the lawn, and that feeling that the day is just beginning. It's a simple idea, but it fits this kind of house perfectly. And now the fun part, and honestly the slightly nerve-wracking part. With all 4 questions answered, Nano Banana starts turning the gears, and then we wait, and I start to wonder, is it actually going to work this time? Hey folks, quick pause. If you want to learn how to sketch in a simple, clear way, not about talent, but about describing your design accurately so AI can turn it into a faithful image you can actually use, there's a link below to join the waitlist for my next live draw-along workshop. And in the meantime, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more tips like this. Okay, back to it. And just like clockwork, it is another beauty. Everything's there, the early morning light, the long view to the distance, even the interior starting to read through the glass. But wait a second, what is this? In my prompt, I described the open terrace in the middle of the second floor as a roof terrace, and I think it took that a little too literally. It's reading it at the roof level, and now I've got a person standing there. So let's fix that. So thinking I was being clever, I went back to Gemini and asked, how do I get Nano Banana to remove just that person? And it came back with a prompt basically asking for the void only, with all people, figures, and objects removed, leaving an open light well, which sounds right, but when the image came back, it literally removed every person and every piece of furniture in the house, which may be the AI future we're headed for, but that's not what I was after. So I went old school and just said, please remove that person. No circles, no extra instructions, and sure enough, it did. So with a sigh of relief, I was back on track, and this time I made 2 quick refinements. Pushed the siding towards that bright white you see in those New York 5 houses out in the Hamptons, and swapped the brick terrace for a dark green ground cover. Seems simple enough, so I sent that prompt off, but unfortunately, and it came back with white clapboard siding instead of the vertical siding I was after, and it turned the entire front lawn into that dark green ground cover, which has its own charm, but again, it's not what I asked for. So it was back to the drawing board, and this time I asked it to roll everything back to the cedar siding, but I figured I'd take the opportunity to try something else at the same time. So I asked for a winter scene, light spilling out into the snow, a pickup truck coming up the driveway to plow, headlights cutting through that blue hour, kids out in the yard building a snowman just before night sets in. And it put the snowplow in the wrong place, which, to be fair, might have made a decent parking area, just not what I had in mind. So I tried that built-in editing tool once more and asked it to move the truck to the midpoint of the driveway on the other side, and it didn't quite get that either. Still, it's the first time I'm using these tools, so I'll get a better handle on that next time. So I moved on to something that almost never fails, a construction scene. Same proportions, same design, but now the house is under construction. First floor deck in, walls up, roof framing underway. I even asked for proper bracing, the kind you'd actually see on site, to make it feel real. And the result is surprisingly convincing, but it's hard not to be impressed by how much it gets right from a single sketch. To learn more about the drawing and AI prompting techniques you saw today, or to join my live weekly draw-along workshop, all the resources are linked in the description below. That's also where you can download the final sketches and prompts and try this workflow yourself. To see the next video in the series, click right here, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, that's the outro.